what was your favorite part of that decision to really invest in yourself? And then what was your least favorite part?
So I love the freedom. A lot of people are scared to do it because it feels like you have less job security. And in some ways you do, but in some ways it's like rather than being employed by one big company that can let you go, you're employed by 50 to 100 companies if you're doing it right and you have the number of clients you should.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the difficult part is finding those clients and getting those clients. And in like right now where I'm at, I am telling you that I was lucky. But I'm sure if you went back and asked me 15 years ago, I'd say that I don't want to do marketing. It's hard. I'm working my butt off.
Yeah.
I don't really know what I'm doing.
I'm Claire Gosti, and this is Nicolle Fuller of SayoStudio, and we're here today to talk about Nicolle. Like I said, she's the founder of SayoStudio. You can reference our last video for a little summary of who is SayoStudio and what we do. But this one is specifically about Nicolle's journey and how she came to start SayoStudio and why, and what drives her every day, I guess. So Nicolle, how did you land in the industry of science illustration?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think if it was really like landing or kind of like a slide in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started out in science. So I got my undergraduate degree in biochemistry, planned to go to graduate school, and I got to work at OHSU in Portland, Oregon.
Where did you do your undergrad?
At Lewis and Clark College,
Okay.
which you also went to.
Yes.
Not at the same time, unfortunately, but
No.
So I worked for 3 years in a molecular biology lab studying leishmaniasis primarily with Dr. Buddy Ullman. And I learned so much. I loved it. But the troubleshooting of lab work, like I just day in and day out, I couldn't see myself continuing to do it.
And this was after Lewis and Clark?
Yes.
After graduating?
Yes.
And you were at OHSU?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I worked as a research assistant, and then I got to be lab manager.
Okay.
So I love the people I worked with. They were doing incredible work. And in college, I got to travel to Kenya. And so studying tropical diseases, which are really underfunded unless, Department of Defense decides that they're important to their mission. They really don't get a lot of funding. So it was really important to me and still is. But because it just wasn't something day to day that I felt like I could do.
Yeah.
And so the nice thing, jumping forward to now, I still have so much respect for the hard work that goes into bench work.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy to do science communication where I get to summarize the incredible results that other people put the work in to do.
Yeah.
And so going back to that time, in undergraduate, high school, all the time, I had done artwork and more specifically drawing as more of an emotional outlet.
Yeah.
So I think I technically had enough credits to be an art minor, but I didn't have quite the right ones because all I did was draw pretty much. So I just kind of stumbled upon it that at the time, the University of California, Santa Cruz had a science illustration graduate program. So I went ahead and went there. And there were also some and I say at the time because now it's at Monterey Bay, but there were also great programs for medical illustration, which kind of aligned more with my biochemistry, molecular biology interests.
Yeah.
But I did there were a lot of fantastic things about the California Science Illustration program.
Okay.
And then my other thing, which I'm saying because I think it's really funny in retrospect, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I didn't want to go even apply to the medical illustration programs because I was from Bellingham, Washington, Pacific Northwest born. And I was willing to go to California, but I did not want to move to the East Coast. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And so
At that time, was it still, like, was John Hopkins?
It was one of the big ones. Yeah.
Okay.
And Georgia, and I'm trying to think of all the others. But yeah, there weren't a lot. There's a lot more, especially specific to molecular biology visualization now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in a minute, we'll get to why it's so funny that I wouldn't move to the East Coast. Yeah. So I did the program there, and then I got to, and I learned so much. And even if a lot of the people that were there more so for natural science illustration, it was still such a great program to really teach you, of course, how to see, but also to tell a story. And I think that that's something that I still love to do and I use in my skills every day. But so I got to work at the Stanford Linear Accelerator as my internship.
Cool.
And so I still just look back with fondness at the time I got to work with theoretical physicists.
Wow.
And also with the engineers who were building the potential designs for a new linear accelerator. Wow. And it ended up being built, I can't remember at the time now who they were in competition with. But anyway, so I got to learn the difference between an engineering physicist and a theoretical physicist, and that they have kind of different ways of approaching problems and describing problems, and the different things that need to be communicated by those groups of people. So I got an introduction to dark energy and dark matter, and it was fascinating.
Yeah. And what did that program look like as far as the art you were producing?
When I was at the graduate program or the...
Well, with the Stanford...
Oh, so I was drawing a picture of the linear accelerator that I did with the engineers. Okay. And then we were trying to depict dark energy. Okay. And so I successfully made Michael Paskin, the physicist I was working with, giggle. So I'm very proud of that. I don't know if it's one of my best works, but it was this picture of like fairies pulling apart a tapestry that was representing dark energy.
Oh my gosh.
It was fun.
Yeah.
And then
was that kind of like a thesis-ish project for your grad program or?
Kind of. Okay. Yeah. One of the requirements of the program was that you do an internship. Okay. And so you can choose where you go.
That makes sense.
And then I had a fantastic opportunity. I had a group reach out to me that was putting together a contract to work at the National Science Foundation in the Public Affairs Office. And so that's based in Washington, D.C. So even though I said I did not want to move to the East Coast, I'm like, this is an opportunity. I want to work at NSF. Yeah. I tell people this and not everybody else recognizes it, which just baffles me. But I grew up watching the nature videos, and at the end, I could just like picture the NSF logo turning at the end. And I was like, what a dream come true that I can work at NSF. So I worked there for about 3 years in their public affairs office. Another thing that I did not know until working for NSF is just the broad range of science that they fund. So of course, in addition to NASA's astronomy, NSF also has a robust astronomy program, a lot of the computational science, molecular biology, but then also economics, sociology, anthropology. I mean, it's incredible. So I got to I did represent all those different disciplines. So I did science illustrations for when they needed press releases out, for some of their congressional presentations that they had when they're going to Congress, both to show what NSF has done with the money that they've been granted, and then also, the budget that they're hoping to have for next year so they can continue funding all of this fantastic science. Yeah. So
I feel like jumping forward a little bit, just a beautiful representation of your work at NSF ended up being the mural you did for them.
Yes.
Which, shows all of these disciplines and how they're interconnected through time and space, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's called the NSF History Wall. That's the official name for it. And I think it'll always be one of the highlights of my career that I got to do that. Yeah. So I believe it's 52 feet wide, and it graces the walls of the employee entrance. So if anybody's worked at NSF, done some time there as a division representative, you've gotten to see that mural. And so it represented, the very beginning of NSF, and like you said, the many different disciplines that it funds. And I think it really instilled in me this appreciation of cross-cutting research. When I was there, that was one thing that NSF was really working to better fund, was really bringing together, scientists from many different areas. And I think that's something that's only become more important as time has gone on.
Yeah.
So
now it's like the status quo, which back then was not really the case.
It is, although I still think it's an effort, to reach 100%. Across. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's where I think a lot of the exciting discoveries are coming from. And
yeah. So NSF.
Yes.
What did it look like after NSF, or why did NSF come to an end?
So I worked at NSF for about 3 years, I think. And there were a couple reasons. So I had slowly started picking up work, freelancing on the side while at NSF. And so it had gotten to a point where I had enough of that work that I felt like I could go out on my own. And I was getting tired of working late nights and on the weekends. Yeah. And so, some of my first clients, I've gotten to work with Science News since that time. Yeah. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Yeah, some just great people that I continue to work with. And the other reason, which I kind of tend to forget about, but I got to do a graphic novel for Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species.
Yes.
And so I got an advance for that gave me the confidence to go out on my own.
Cool.
And it just went from there. Yep. So ever since that time, I worked from home. So, during COVID and everything, I was more fortunate than most because I'd already kind of gotten my system down for how to work from home. And I've been doing it for a long time.
At that point, was home still DC, or how long did you stay in DC after?
That is a great question. So I ended up living in DC for 8 years. Okay. So about 5 years working my own.
Okay.
And I love DC. Yeah. There were a lot of reasons I wish we could have stayed.
Yeah.
But my family was back in Washington State, and my husband got a job teaching at Bellevue College. So we moved back to the Seattle area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So most of that time, I taught myself how to create my own website over that time. And I did my best to do marketing, and it was a lot of, fits and starts. So most of the work that I had was really just word of mouth.
Yeah.
And I worked hard on marketing, but there's only so much you can do when you're on your own.
Yeah.
Trying to do it all. And trying to think. I lost my train of thought.
You did also utilize like source books at that time?
I did on and off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that, I think if people are interested in, hearing the different waves of marketing, both what has worked and what won't work anymore, because things have changed so much.
So much.
I guess that's what I wanted to say, is that I'd like to think that I was successful because I worked hard and I did great work. And that's how I, got a lot of word of mouth work. But on the other hand, it's amazing how many other science illustrators, medical animators, illustrators there are now.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot more competition.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how things.
But I think it's safe to say at that time, or as you were starting, you really were one of the, founders of this discipline, I think, especially outside of medical illustration.
That's Yeah, I feel hesitant to claim that. I appreciate you saying that, but but it is true.
Yeah.
It's amazing just representations of cell biology. There were a few other people, but there weren't a whole lot.
Mm-mm.
There weren't a whole lot of people that actually knew what a protein structure looked like when I first started.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty unique. And I think it also opened up opportunities where, for example, at the Stanford Linear Accelerator, I'm not a physicist, but I had a better basis in education than some of my peers to understand some of the physics and chemistry and other things.
Yeah.
So I got to do a lot of exciting things. Yeah, and it is interesting because a lot of the work was word of mouth, the meandering paths that are somewhat disparate. So I've gotten to do a lot of nanotechnology, a lot of early nanosphere to now the very developed, mRNA vaccine development sort of drawings over the years. And then I've also gotten to do, surprisingly enough, a lot of ecology pieces. And a
lot of space.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I love getting to do such a wide variety.
Yeah. And you really are, physics, I feel like, physics, like theoretical, and then engineering, and then as it pertains to space, I feel like that's really something that makes you unique. You have a really strong grasp there, especially with your background in like molecular biology. So I personally, I think that's something that really sets you apart.
Yeah, I haven't, even as we've grown, I haven't found a lot of people that are clamoring to do quantum artwork, and maybe I just haven't found them. If you're excited about doing quantum artwork, let us know.
Yeah, reach out, please.
But I will not tell you that I understand quantum, but I understand it enough to ask the right questions and try to think of different ways to represent it and talk to people about their work. And really, I also get excited about what they're doing. I understand that much that I, appreciate the place we're at with the potential for quantum computing. And it's pretty exciting. Yeah. So, and I think that's something we can get into more. But, we've been talking about these different groups that I've worked with over the years. Yeah. And it's been incredible. And so now, fast forward to the present. And as much as we've loved those relationships and working with those, we are trying to be a little bit more intentional with who we're working with and reach out rather than waiting for people to come to us. Yeah. So it's been a learning experience, but it's exciting. And I guess, sorry, I should let you ask a question, but we're jumping over a period of time that we can kind of go back to, but I'm so happy right now in this moment to be really honestly excited about what I'm doing. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, after leaving NSF and embarking on starting your own business, while starting a family, having to do all the things for a long time, what was your favorite part of that decision to really invest in yourself? And then what was your least favorite part?
I don't know where to start. I don't know. I think it's an ongoing question. Yeah.
What stands out to you?
Invest in myself. I'm just trying to digest that and trying to think if I'm still doing that.
Well, just starting your business. So your favorite part as far as what running a business entails.
I have some thoughts.
Your least favorite part.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I love the freedom.
Okay.
And a lot of people are scared to do it because it feels like you have less job security. Mm-hmm. And in some ways you do, but in some ways it's like rather than being employed by one big company that can let you go, you're employed by 50 to 100 companies if you're doing it right and you have the number of clients you should.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the difficult part is finding those clients and getting those clients. And in like right now where I'm at, I am telling you that I was lucky. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure if you went back and asked me 15 years ago, I'd say that I don't want to do marketing. It's hard. I'm working my butt off. Yeah. I don't really know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so it's a constant, I don't love that. And so I've had to learn how to, and it doesn't feel natural promoting myself. Mm-hmm. And that's actually one thing that I really like now that we've grown and we've really embraced being SayoStudio beyond just myself. It feels so much better promoting SayoStudio and everybody than feeling like it's all about me.
Yeah.
So that makes it easier. And then the other thing, like it's really hard to learn how to price things and learn what to charge. And there's a ton of great books out there and a ton of great podcasts that can help you with that. But still at the end of the day, you're the one that has to tell the person, you know, who you're hoping to work with, it's going to be this much. And even when you've done your research, even like we today, like it's not an easy thing. Mm-hmm. And it's always something that needs to evolve and change based on where you're at and your expertise and the people that you're working with, what their needs are.
Yeah.
And so I still don't love that.
Yeah.
It's still difficult.
It's hard.
And on the other hand, like you need people to respect what you're doing. And for better or worse in this capitalist society, money is, you know, largely a sign of the respect that you're giving the group that you're working with.
Yeah.
So I don't have quite as many people come to me anymore that are like, do this for exposure.
Yeah.
You know, we won't pay you except you'll get exposure, you know, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
thank goodness.
Yeah. But, you know, it happens all the time to a lot of people, especially when you're younger and you're starting out. And that's hard.
Yeah.
And it's hard to put your foot down. And so one piece of advice that I give people is that even if you do really want to work for a group, because, you know, maybe they're doing a mission that you believe in, or it's, you know, you're just starting out and you feel like you need it for your portfolio, like tell the person that you're doing the work with what your work is worth and make it clear that you're giving them this one-time discount.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what helped me and still helps me, you know, do this is knowing that, you know, the more that you can educate the people you're working with, the better it makes it for the entire art design community.
Yes.
So
everyone who comes after you. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a huge one. Who would you say have been some of your greatest mentors in this experience of building your own company?
Oh, that's a great question. Gosh, I haven't pre-thought of this. Let me think about it.
Well, you had a business coach.
I did have a business coach. That was more recently. I'm trying to think back to when I was a lot younger and I went out on my own.
Yeah.
I feel like it was more kind of, I must have had mentors, but I feel like I really took a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Like this is what I want and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But I must.
And you had proof that you could.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have to have a future podcast when I think about this, because I'm sure I'm forgetting people.
Yeah.
That I shouldn't be.
I don't know. I feel like I struggle with that question. I don't, off the top of my head, have like a lot of people I idolize, or I have some that are very clear to me, but Yeah, that's a hard one
Yeah.
for me too.
Although, I mean, when I think about it, when I started, print magazines were still the thing. So
Yes.
I would go to the newsstand and I would, like pick out all of the different magazines and leaf through them and see like, oh, I want to do work like this one day.
Cool.
So I definitely had people that I aspired to.
Okay.
I just wasn't necessarily the best at remembering their name or looking up more information about them.
Yeah.
And I know that I had, for example, at Lewis and Clark, great science mentors and, that really believed in my non-traditional path and helped me get there.
Which is huge.
So, and surprisingly, my parents never questioned it. They're like, yeah, that makes sense. And Nicole's doing this like career path that we've never heard of anybody else doing. So, yeah.
Little resistance.
Yeah.
And then, tell us a little bit about your family and also hobbies outside of science communication.
Oh, I wasn't really expecting to get into family. And, so I have a daughter who's now 14.
Okay.
So she was born when we lived in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And then we moved out here and we had my son who's now 11.
How old was she when you guys moved to Seattle?
1.5.
Okay.
Yeah. So as we know, I was working for myself and working virtually, although I don't think we used the word virtually back then for working, but so we had my parents and my husband's parents who lived an hour and a half away. Okay. So we lived between their houses and I would like carry my computer in my car back and forth with my 1.5-year-old as before we found a house here. I'm in Bellevue now. Yeah. So it was good times. It was interesting. So it doesn't feel like we've been here for that long now, but I guess we've been here for 13 years.
Yeah.
My activities, I really like being active. Yeah. It helps keep me from being too anxious. And I'm sure everybody will be really surprised, but I'm in my head way too much. So being active, I like to run and rock climb, although I'm really out of shape and I haven't been rock climbing in a while at the gym. Helps me kind of like shut down that part of my brain for a little bit and stop worrying and thinking. And yeah. And I'm lucky that my husband teaches biology, so I can always check in with him if I'm getting rusty on something, or he's an entomologist and more of an ecology person. So something that isn't my original area of study, although I feel like I've learned a lot both from him and from doing illustrations over the years.
And you like to be in your garden?
I do. Yeah. Yes. I like to play in the dirt. So I'm a true Taurus. I like to.
How has your garden evolved over the last 14 years?
Yeah, so I'm one of those weirdos that has a vegetable garden in the front garden.
Yeah.
So it used to be totally grass. And we totally mulched it over.
That's amazing.
To grow tomatoes. I love growing tomatoes from seed.
Okay.
I have wonderful seeds from my Spanish neighbor who got me heirloom seeds from her friends back in Spain. And so I love it. Although the past couple years since we've been growing SayoStudio, I haven't been in it quite as much.
Really?
So I'm hoping I can get back to that a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's definitely going back to the kids. It's been kind of an interesting ebb and flow. Like I was able to work with them when they were little, but it was hard, and it was definitely like a back and forth over, I'd read advice over, you need to take yourself seriously. So, as a working parent, as a solopreneur, you need to pay for childcare full time and give yourself that space. And I tried that, and it was so stressful because of money that, we cut back. So then luckily my daughter would nap for 3 hours at a time. So that made it easier. But anyway, that goes back a long time. But and then, so when both my daughter hit 10, and or was about to. That's about the time when we started growing SayoStudio,
Okay.
which seems odd in retrospect that I decided I wanted to grow SciComm when my daughter was 10, because that's the time when I really felt like, oh my gosh, my kids are not going to be kids very much longer, and I started getting really sentimental.
Yeah.
But that, oddly enough, growing the business felt like the best way to still do what I love, support the clients in a way that I wanted to, give them the services I felt like they needed at that point, in a way that hopefully would give me more time for my kids.
Yeah.
And so in a lot of ways it has.
Yeah.
I'm not working as many nights. I'm not working as many evenings.
Yeah.
I should say mostly not. I'm mostly not working nights and evenings anymore. So.
Yeah. Okay, one last question.
Okay.
Knowing all you know, everything you've been through, starting a business, what would you tell your 9-year-old self if you could give
my
her
9-year-old self?
If you could give her some advice.
Oh my gosh, I have a really, to me, funny anecdote. So I was kind of a morbid kid, I guess. So
I can picture that.
I know, right? I think like all science artists, medical artists, like I don't know, they like weird. I really wanted to be an artist.
Okay.
But I looked back at all of these artists and I like learned their history. And I'm like, oh, they all died poor. And it's not that I cared about money so much, but I'm like, they all died poor. And nobody even knew they were a great artist until like years after their death. Like, so the only way I can be a great artist, like I'm going to be like unknown, poor. So yeah, I never want to be an artist.
Wow.
So, and I had a lot of like, I think as a kid, I had a lot of things that I was just very like, this is the way it is. So I wish, and I don't know if it's possible, but I wish that I could have been a little bit more open, like to, there's different ways to do things, to enjoy doing art, to, and in, ways that you might not have expected.
Yeah.
Even in college, like there was an illustration program. I don't know, was there an illustration program when you were at Lewis and Clark? It was a new thing when I was, anyway.
I don't think so.
I never took an illustration class, and I never was interested in graphic design because I had it like in my head that graphic design was only about big brands, super, super corporate, all about making money. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Like, it's boring. I'm not all about making money. And now I think that was so narrow-minded, and I wish I had been earlier, more open to all the different ways that, like graphic design can help so many different companies, nonprofits, groups, and how it can be art unto itself. So,
I mean, but it sounds like, you didn't connect art with business, and you had, you had, this is what success looks like. And I don't know, I would argue that that's what you were fed, there wasn't an alternative perspective. So you couldn't have had an alternative perspective as a kid.
Perhaps not. And I think that's something that I'm still learning. I'll just be honest. I don't love the idea of being a business. Like that sounds really weird and counterintuitive and kind of wrong in our society. But I'm learning to do it the way that I feel good about it. And a large part of that is, working with you and some of the other great people that we have working with us of, doing things the way that feels good for you and still making a living. Like that's really the goal. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's Nicolle Fuller, founder of SayoStudio. If you have any questions for her, or if she touched on any topics that are particularly inspiring for you, you can contact us. Our information is in the description. And we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I appreciate it.